our dogs sometimes start barking when we're doing this because they feel abandoned or whatever, even though they're not.
Ah,
No, they're
there
just
she is.
annoying.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hi.
Linda.
Hi,
Hi, good to
Linda.
meet you, Alan.
Oh, you've met me before, but long and long ago.
And was
Didn't
it
your
like,
husband bring you out to Vegas a couple times?
Oh yeah,
I
that's
remember
right. We have
now.
pictures. That's
I
right.
remember now.
What was that? 2009 or something?
Something
Maybe.
like that. I can't
Might have been
remember.
earlier than that. Could have been earlier than that.
I
Maybe.
think you brought her out there a couple times. I know the last time you were there, you definitely brought her because
No, that
I
was
still
another
remember.
woman the other time. That was a different one.
Okay,
Shut
or we
up.
met at another conference somewhere. That's also another
I
possibility.
remember hanging out now. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
It was
remember
fun.
the PubCon one,
The
but I
yes,
think that was the second time we had met, but I can't remember where the
that
first
was
time was.
yeah, that was the fun one that we were
Right.
partying after.
Yeah, but there was probably some other conference, not in Vegas, because I didn't know. I hate going to Vegas for conferences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vegas is cool like three times, and then you're like, all right, I've seen it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was there last year, and it's like, okay, I haven't been here for a while. That hotel's gone. This one's replaced it. Oh, that sphere looks kind of cool, but yeah. So
Yeah.
I haven't been for a while. I have
Well,
not
you
been.
can probably come with me.
I
I
I
usually get
know
like
I
two gigs
could.
a year there, three maybe.
At least
We'll see.
three,
yeah,
I think.
it's just one of those things. It's like at least the last time I finally decided I went up to Grand Canyon. I always said next time I'm in Vegas, I'll take an extra day or two and go to a Grand Canyon day trip.
Yeah.
Finally
Yeah,
did that.
make it fun. Make it actually fun instead
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
just
because
sort of
who knows the next time we'll
terrifying.
be back there. I'm just getting so sick of Vegas.
This episode is sponsored by Vegas. Don't listen to those guys. They don't know what they're talking about. We have an infinite variety of things you can do. Dancers, singers, drinking, losing money. Come on out. It's new this year. Everything's new. New hotels, like the guy said. But it's awesome.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm going to mute myself because I'm having sneezing attacks.
Oh,
Okay.
but sneezing attacks are fun.
Today's
On the
episode is
recording.
brought to you by Kleenex.
Yeah.
If you have any dirty
exactly.
X's, we'll clean them up. We have fake sponsors, Alan, just for fun.
Yeah.
We improvise. Yeah.
The heck you do? What exactly are analytics? Is this Anna who?
Anaphylactic.
We can introduce ourselves to Alan. Alan, hi. I'm Linda Harvey from Optimedia, and my main gig here is strategy, client interaction, and facilitation. But I'm more specialized in Meta and Amazon.
And I'm
So
Tracy.
that's me.
I'm Tracy Casimir Cree, and we've worked together before a little bit. And I do whatever Brian and Linda tell me to do, and then I tell them what to do.
Yeah.
Brian and I know each other all too well, but just to give you, Linda and Tracy, a little bit more background than I think you may know. Besides my name, Alan Knecht, I've been in the digital space now since about 1996 when I built my first website.
Nice.
And one of the stories is from the day I built it, I said, oh, I wonder if anyone's visiting it. And back then, there were no tools available.
Mhm.
And the only way was you put JavaScript-based counters on your website that said this site has been visited X times. And the only way to do that was to access your site to see that count and record it. But then you have to remember to take yourself out of the count.
Well,
So if you
right.
checked your site too often, you really inflated those numbers. But right around that time, AW Stats came out, so you could start processing log files and actually start getting some good information. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I did analytics or data analysis in previous jobs as a manager of a purchasing department. My first jobs at a university, just collect data and extract data and analyze it and say, what does this tell us and how can we take advantage of this? So that's my background. And I used to build websites, as I said, back in 1996. Then I got into the world of SEO because all the sites that we're building were doing really well in the search engines of the time. The Vista, Hotbot, all those ones that don't exist anymore.
Wow. I
Yeah.
remember those.
So yeah, we all
Flashback.
remember them. And then by that time, I was getting out of building websites because it became a bunch of BS and a commodity. And then I got into doing PPC, digital ad spend. The clients I was getting really, I wouldn't say, weren't the quality clients I wanted. I had a few good ones, but then I was going up against, once the big ad agency here out of Toronto area started realizing, ooh, there's a market we're missing. They went very aggressively after their clients that they were buying Yellow Pages ads for us. And I could not compete on them taking them out to country clubs for games of golf, and the senior executive said, give them the business. So I pulled out of that. I kept doing SEO, but always was focused on analytics, showing my clients the success of what we were doing, which those agencies never did that. Some of them tried to. I also got to show them why their data they were showing them was BS and all that fun stuff. So that's my background. But over the last 15 years, I've focused pretty much entirely on the world of analytics, setting up measurement systems to some very bizarre situations, but basically so that people can see if they build it, are people using it? And if they're using it, what are they using it for? And are we getting value from what we've just invested? So that's my background.
Very cool. Very cool.
You have to have a special kind of brain, I think, to do that.
I don't know if we want to start with something slightly more general or just dive right in.
Alan, what is measurement?
Stop.
I'm kidding.
That's
I'm kidding,
not-
Jernette.
I mean, I know we'll want to get into Google Analytics and GA4 for sure, right? We definitely want to talk about that. Definitely want to talk about what the hell are we going to do in the future and how things are changing because of privacy stuff. And
Oh, yeah, I got some points in that.
yeah, so I know that, I mean, that's what's uppermost in my mind because we see things coming down the pike we already have, right? If we can't see this anymore, we can't see that. And I'm already kind of missing the days of Big Brother, even though I was sort of uncomfortable with Big Brother at the time. But man, it made advertising a lot easier. So
Well, I have some
what are
good
we
points
going
I
to
can
do?
talk about
Yeah,
that. So.
please do.
Okay, so you want to start with the future? Perfect.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Let's start
right.
with the
So we're going to start with the
How are
future,
we
not
going
the
to
history, because I'm a history buff. So here's the reality. Yes, with especially in the EU and UK, where they've had very strict privacy laws about consent. I'm based in Canada, where we have slightly more restricted than what's in the US, but not horribly different. I've seen with some of my UK and European clients, yes, a significant drop in data collected in their analytics programs when they implemented consent according to the rules and laws governing them. Many had it implemented incorrectly, and I got brought aboard to make sure it was being correctly implemented through their analytics configuration. So here's what happens. So part of it is target audience. If you're dealing with an older generation, they don't care. Oh, there's enough information on me on the internet. Who cares about it? Then you're talking a younger generation who may be a little more technical savvy. And if it's really young, they don't care either because everybody knows everything anyways. So it is, I would say if your target audience is probably 25 to 40 in Europe and in the EU, you will maybe getting a lot less data because they are opting out of it. And it also depends on the nature of the website. But what's interesting that I discovered, and I had a couple clients, and we played around with this, is in the EU and the UK, you have to have explicit permission. So if someone hasn't been to your site before, and once again, they have to agree to accept cookies, and if they don't accept cookies, they'll get prompted with this every time. There's a pop-up window before you can collect any data. We're asking permissions. You're going to agree to cookies, you're going to agree to other methods of tracking, and you get the choice of only ones that are for functionality of the site. That's one setting. There's basically three settings, and the ultimate is there's an option for analytics, and then there's an option for ad tracking, so that it will send data back to places like Google Ads and conversion pixels. So I'm seeing is a lot of them are opting out of the ad tracking. But here's what most people didn't think about, that pop-up window. This comes back to the question of usability. How many of us get pop-ups when we go to websites or something? And what's the first thing we do? We click that little X in the corner, close the window. We don't even look at it. We assume it's an ad. Guess what? If your pop-up window looks like an ad and has that X in the upper right-hand corner, you will more than likely have less than 50% accepting any cookie settings.
Right.
But depending on the consent software, some of them offer some different options and even a custom one. If you can take out that X out of that window and basically force them to say, yes, I accept, and you have these 3 buttons of what level you want to accept, you're going to still get about a 70 to 80% accepting. In some cases, client, it's still about a 90%. So once again, it's a usability. If your pop-up that says, give us permission to track you, looks like an ad, nobody's even going to read that. But if they can't figure out how to close it, and the only option is I accept or I decline tracking.
It's like conversion optimization. And that's good. The ones I like from that perspective just kind of say accept, or I think that's a button that says like look at your options or something. It's not even an option. Yeah.
And I have done some testing where it says accept, customize, decline all. And you'd be surprised how few act. And then once again, usability, knowing your audience. This is A/B testing. Let's move those buttons around. If your software allows you, should we have accept all on the right? What's the order? Now, most consent software doesn't allow customization of that nature, but it is one of those things that basically they all do if you know how to work with the client, with the provider. If you can get 80% accepting it, you're going to get quality data. And this is where, Linda, going to your question about how you used to love ads. Yes, dealing with ads is a different issue, but to make quality business decisions, and when I had to study statistics in university and econometric modeling, there's something called a confidence interval. How confident are you in your data? And if you think of polls, and the American just had their big election, and Canada's going to be coming up to one here shortly, and all the pollsters come out, and you will see statements like, this data is accurate within 4% or 5%, out of 5 times in typical polling. So that means they're off by more than 5%, 20% of the time. How accurate is that data? When you look at how elections turn out, sometimes it is a mess. I was looking at a lot of these polls because I'm, a numbers guy. They're interviewing between 2,000 to 3,000 people when they're doing these polls, like national polls.
Such a teeny
small
sample
percentage of about 150, 175 million voters.
Million.
Now, state-wise, they also interview 2,000 to 3,000 people, so their state levels are actually more accurate. And we put so much faith in the polls, and the political parties are putting so much faith in those polls. So now, if you get an 80% analytic sampling of your data of user traffic, not 1%, like a poll. Exactly. So now your data is going to generally be accurate, and there are some tools that you can calculate this with. It's going to be generally accurate within 1 or 2 percentage points. 5% of the time, you're off by more than 2%.
Right.
If you had, that's still quality data to make
that's
the business decisions.
Though, right?
Which ads are working? Which campaign is working? What changes in our website from a usability standpoint? Because if it's 3% did this versus 1%, it's statistically insignificant for making a business decision.
Right. Like in my understanding of data, I used to be in medicine and research. So, and in human studies, the whole statistical significance is that roughly if you get a 30% sample, that would translate to a few percentage points, which in human studies is statistically significant. Is there a sort of level to say, like, what is a statistically significant percentage in the world of analytics? I mean, I'm sure it varies somewhat, but it can't be as narrow for human studies.
Well, traditionally, short of going through access logs, there's always been leakage in data collected. So once think products like Google Analytics or Adobe where data is being collected on a server other than where the website's sitting,
Okay.
there's always been leakage. People block cookies, little blips on the internet.
Right.
So you never had 100% data accurate, especially calculating the number of unique visitors. It's never been accurate. So this is a business decision, not an industry decision. My gut, when I work with my clients and I tell them, I said, look, if I can get you 80 to 90% of your data to make business decisions on, and you're going to be within 1 to 2% accuracy, they would go, oh, that's incredible. But they just
really
hear
good.
about loss of data. They hear, we're only collecting 80% of our data. Okay, so you're accurate within 2 percentage points. And I have to, there's a couple tools you can use to actually work it out. 19 times out of 20. Oh, well, yeah, that's enough to make it a good business decision. And that is the key. It's not an absolute, but if I were to tell you, if you bought this lottery ticket, that you had a 19 out of 20 chance of winning it, would you buy the lottery ticket? Probably.
Every time.
Every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
Every single
Okay, so what?
So it
that
is,
you know, that's where it is.
So we're still well able to determine trends in a significant way that you can make decisions, both in terms of marketing, advertising, and operationally, right?
Correct. And that, as you mentioned with the medical industry, you do human trials. How many, you're not taking an 80% population sample, even taking a 1% population sample, because you could put numbers at risk, but you're looking at within our sample, what more data you have, the better. But is it significantly enough data? And that generally from an analytics perspective for right now, it certainly is.
It certainly is. Now,
and
you
by the way,
like,
it's so much better than it was like what did we have 40 years ago? We had nothing. We had no data and no accuracy, just gut feelings and opinions, right? So compare that. We're in a much better place.
Definitely.
Well,
but I just think a lot of people are panicking with the fact that they used to be able to see a little bit more. And now that we're able to see a little bit less, that like that's going to change everything.
But also perspective has changes. Did they see a little bit more? I had clients who actually saw less because it was so poorly configured. It got configured where you actually start capturing more data or more relevant data. And I'll take us back 100 years ago to the early days of radio. Advertisers, the AC Nielsen tracking, they used to had a sample across America that they put devices in people's radios.
Yeah, in their homes.
and basically a ticker tape that will record what channel they listen to, what time of day they listen, and based on that, they were selling advertising. Well, things have improved. But it was still data
because I mean, the number of, if you were a Nielsen family, I mean, and there was a whole lot of controversy back in the day about like, who are these Nielsen families? Because are they representing most of the population, or are they just like, these Nebraska farmers or whatever? But that became the big issue about like, who exactly is a Nielsen family?
That evolved to people keeping journals that they would send in for analysis. And how accurate were those journals that were being kept of what they were watching?
Just going to say, you don't remember to fill out those journals.
Right, like in real time. Then they started putting TV top boxes on people's things to see what TV shows people were watching in time of day. Well, that didn't. Okay, TV's on, but were they actually in the room when the commercial hit? Did they go to the kitchen? Did they go to the bathroom?
Were they in the can? Yeah, I know. And it's the same kind of thing. It's like I try to tell some of our clients that are panicking that there's privacy restrictions. And I'm like, look, we're not yet back at the day where you just put an ad in a magazine and they told you how many doctors' offices that magazine was in. And you hoped somebody looked at it and that's it.
Right. Well, that was also when you'd have the little card inserts and you'd hope someone would fill it in and put it in the mail.
Right.
Dropping off coupons in your mailbox or people's homes, mail drops. And years ago, but smart companies actually had codes in those coupons. So they know which mail drop it went to, not just, oh, we dropped it in this zip code. And how were the sales in that zip code? And how many coupons? Other companies didn't care. So there
Yeah.
were opportunities and things still, let's start running an ad. Yes, knowing how many people click
Yeah.
through an ad, fantastic.
I mean, I'm thinking right now, one of our clients that are in one of those highly regulated industries, that is usually banking, finance stuff, employment and home ownership kind of things. And so they are, and they are very risk averse in terms of potential liability. And in the US, there are a lot of legal folks that are just targeting smallish, medium-sized companies and hitting them up for some kind of wiretapping violation because, which is, it's like an old one that should have been taken off the books before digital tracking became a thing, and it wasn't. So there's like all this weird stuff. Anyhow, they are very, very worried about privacy policy and making sure that they're within the regulations and the law, so they don't get sued. But that means that they've got the thing you were describing of the consent box, but it goes down to like, you can't get past it. And you have to select, and unfortunately, most of it is super detailed. They didn't go with a customize or accept. It's like they all come up as customized, where you have to say, do you want the data to be tracked by Google? Do you want it to be tracked on Facebook? Do you want, I mean, and ad versus just data versus, and it's a mess in the sense that all of a sudden the tracking for their website is just crazy.
Yeah, it blows up. And once again, it comes down to demographics, who's going to do this. Most clients who have good digital lawyers that specialize in digital consent and digital things, and I've worked with enough companies who I say, you got to get your lawyer involved. I'm not an expert in consent.
Yeah.
And it's not, and I know a few that have been sued. It's not enough just to have it in your privacy policy.
Right.
And I caught a few clients, they have a wonderful privacy policy, but there's no links to it. Go find their privacy policy on their webpage, on their website. You actually have to literally go onto a search engine, search in company X privacy policy. Well, we don't want people reading it. And that's where they're getting sued.
Yeah, our
All right.
privacy policy is private. Sorry.
It's published. If someone wants to look for it, they'll find it. And so and one of them I caught this, and it was funny. I said, talk to your lawyer about this. And when the lawyer found out they didn't have any links on their homepage to their privacy policy or even in their
Oh
footer,
my gosh.
it was like a 3-tier click. He just about lost it on them. All right. So
I bet.
So yes, you can have consent, but in that consent pop-up, you need to say, you want details? Here, click for our detailed privacy policy, which pop up over top of it. So
Yeah.
there are, but once again, you need lawyers who understand this. And if you're a big firm, don't trust your lawyer who's a contract law expert. Make sure that your
Yeah.
banking contracts and follow your various state privacy policy. No, and also in the US gets crazy because different states have different privacy laws, which
Yeah.
in the EU, each country can tweak it a little bit, but it cannot, they can't make it less and they can't make it more. Like they can just be more clarification. And the same thing, UK basically took the EU policy and they actually made it a little less
Exactly.
stringent.
Right.
But it's still almost identical. And in Canada, it's national privacy law. There are
Yeah.
consumer protection laws that are provincially based,
But it's
they can go
countrywide.
above. But it's like the only province that does that here is Quebec, which has its own laws.
Mhm.
But most part, it's like, yeah, it's a federal privacy
Yeah.
law. And it makes it
I think a
far
lot
easier.
of companies in the US are doing, they kind of see the writing on the wall. It's like, yes, different states have different policies, but everybody knows that everybody's heading to the same place. And the larger companies are just implementing it as going with kind of replicating the EU and saying, we're going to use that standard, since that eventually everybody
Right.
in the
And if
US
you're in
is
the
going to
medical
get there
industry
anyway.
with the HIPAA laws and everything else are different.
Yes.
California, as general privacy protection, tends to have the most stringent. So I know some companies are
Right.
not doing any business in California, but want to follow California's law because they figure they're going to copy it.
Exactly. Exactly. That's the direction that everything is headed, is that they have the most advanced. And so that's the direction they'll go. Yeah. So what would you say to somebody, a company that's worried about the fact that maybe their consent banner is affecting their ability to track?
Fix it.
Fix
Once
it.
again,
So it's fixable.
Choose a
it's
different one. Right?
fixable. Once again, you need and this is the hardest part, and it's a cost benefit analysis. I had one client, once again,
Mhm.
they chose because they had some relationship with one of the particular consent providers that Google approves. Fantastic. But they were a Shopify site. Shopify had rejected this
Yes.
company's thing. But we
Right.
implemented it according to their spec. It drove their data crazy. And I
Yeah.
couldn't find it until we had some third-party tool in there that I finally realized what was happening is how Shopify works and how it was integrated to Shopify basically was giving them double counts on just about everything because so I had to basically hack the fix. Once again, so find what your platform that your site's on. Don't just go by Google has approved us. Find one that your CMS has approved.
Right.
That's key. And don't just focus, well, this one's going to cost us. And once again, it's hard for small businesses because it really comes down to this is going to cost me $100 a month, and this is going to cost me $15,000 a month. So you can't, right? So it is a cost benefit analysis. I've seen differences of a couple $100 a month for major corporations, but our budget doesn't allow us to go to the more expensive one. The more expensive one may not be the best one for you either.
May not even be. Yeah.
But you need to
maybe it would be,
evaluate it.
so maybe it would be if it looks like your data's going wonky and crazy ever since you implemented your consent policies, hire somebody like, say, you, for example, to figure it out and look to see is it implemented properly.
You're assuming they're looking at
somebody like him is available.
You're assuming
they're looking at their data.
Yes, thank you.
And on Brian's point, and this is, he and I both have run into this far too often. I get called in when someone finally looks at their data, and when we look at it when we're doing our year-end reports.
Right.
But how many times did you make website changes? How many times did you do this? And well, yeah, but that's always ongoing. Now I cannot go back historically and fix your data. Yeah. Sometimes I had this with a very large automotive manufacturer, and I arrived at a conference and they tried to look at something, and they were using the data in a way they had never used it before, and noticed there was something wonky in the data. I had to come up with a way to massage the data to fill in this gapping hole. We traced it back to a specific day. We could see what the change was, but we have no idea who did it, why they did it, but it affected not all their data, only one specific data. But they said, but we always look at it. I said, well, if you always looked at it, you would have noticed it within. You would have noticed within 2 weeks, not 6 months later. And that, and that's the key. Is you need, and this was our analytics team, but the analytics team was tasked with producing very rigid reports, not, and this was their year-end report. Right.
Yeah, so if you look at different stats at different times of the year and you don't bother looking frequently enough, you may run into trouble at the end of the year.
And too many companies, we're running an ad campaign. Right, we're running an ad campaign, let's evaluate the ad. But you haven't looked at your analytics in 6 months.
Right, yeah.
Did somebody change something? Yeah. I can't tell you how many times people have added new sections to websites and didn't add their analytics code to it. But nobody decided to check it. Yeah. They just assumed it was going to be there.
I want to weep hearing that.
Well, this is where I wanted to go. Like after all that talking about, hey, make sure you have the right cookie thing and all that. Let's talk about how crazy often we don't have the right data. The data's confused, the tracking's messed up, and nobody knows it, and nobody is like centrally looking at that. And that means we cannot give executives the business reports they want, right? Yeah.
I hate to say this is where you come in and you get brought in, and I look at these, and I've been brought in there. Well, this is where I told you so, and I've run into this where I lost out on a project because my quote was too high for them, and they did a hack job. They went with the lowest bidder and got a hack job implemented. Not saying all lowest bidders do hack jobs. I've seen some that have been great jobs, so I'm not going to pick on that. But they always miss, and that is, and Brian's been, I think, through one of these with me, which is called a measurement plan. This is where you actually sit down, not just with the executive, but it's a whole think tank of all the stakeholders, and you start top down. What is the purpose of what we're doing? And it can start with the corporate mission statement or the departmental mission statement. Okay, how are we doing this from a marketing perspective? Like, what are we expecting? Are we going to run email campaigns? Are we going to run Google ads? Are we going to run social media ads? Each one of those has to be isolated. And then how are we going to measure success? So if you have an email campaign, okay, great. Where are you getting your mail lists from? Is it only people who've signed up for your newsletter? And you want to be able to compare that to people maybe who you bought a list from some industry related conference? There's different measurements. And same thing, how are we targeting our Google ads? Are these people who've already, based on cookies? You have options, there's social media ads. Are we running ads within our thing? There's all sorts of things. And then you say, okay, what do we expect? If we're hitting an email campaign from people where we have a list of, they may or may not know us, or maybe they came by our booth at this conference in the, vendor hall, it's a different messaging. You may not get them to come and purchase your product right away if that's the kind of your website, but you want to see, hey, how many people came and signed up for a newsletter? And then and I always tell people, now you have to put in a value on it. It's not just how many people came and signed up for my newsletter. What's a value of someone signing up for your newsletter? Is it $1? Is it $100?
Yeah.
And that goes between industries. And that goes back to having a good CRM. If you're a mid to large size business, you have some kind of CRM. Where did we get this name? So yes, they signed up for our newsletter. So we got their first name and their email address. Oh, wow. We got them from email list from conference X. So
that'd be so nice to be able to know all of that.
But this is stuff that's always been doable, but most people don't
but who
take the
does
time
it?
but have never taken the time to set up. And then
Right.
whatever that booth cost you at that conference, and for too many years, companies have done it on gut feel. And then they say, oh, we get nothing out of being at those events. How do you know?
Yeah,
they don't know.
And they don't know. So that's also why a lot of these conferences now are suffering, because people don't want to have booths at the events. And other times I've worked with companies who get these lists and they start evaluating the last 6 months we've been at these many. Wow, look at how many leads we got. And a lead has a value. It's not just signed up for a newsletter. It's how many people became a lead and what's our conversion rate on those leads. And those are the type of things. And it's something that's been doable for decades. It has nothing to do with the web, right?
But people so often don't do it. Well, and then can you talk for a minute about the difference between data that we collect as advertisers, say from a Google ad campaign, or let's not even use Google, let's use the ones like Meta or Pinterest, or the things where we're getting data about the activity on the ad from within the ad platform. But of course, when you try to check that and see how valid that is on the website side, where you're sending the people, nary the twain. And is there any way to improve that, or is there a way that it's not being set up properly to track things? Talk about that.
Okay, multi-loaded question. So I'm going to start with.
I know.
So things have changed. So we just talked about consent. So here's the one thing.
Yeah.
All those ad platforms tell you how many clicks you got on an ad. So even before consent, did the person hit the back button before your site loaded? And I've seen sites, they get a lot of clicks, but the site loads slowly. So once again, you get a click, but the site hadn't loaded. All right. So now that your site loaded, but you can't collect any data until someone accepts consent.
Yeah.
you still get the clicks. So if someone says, no, you can't track me, you don't capture them. So I treat it as you're comparing apples to oranges to avocados. All three are fruits. Can you directly compare those fruits? No. So I look at them in different silos. So there's one silo which ads are getting the clicks. Now, if you have consent and you feel that consent is stopping collections, which ads are getting the consent acceptance? So once again, this goes back to the quality of your ad.
Wait, that's really
And my
smart. So
guess
like
is
how many people are tracking that as a metric? Like how many?
That's the
none.
That's crazy.
Nobody. Exactly. So, I mean, and is there a way to set up your tracking so that you are able to link the ad click and the consent?
The answer is it
Acceptance.
would depend on your consent software. Most consent software, because you can't track anything until they accept it. However,
Right.
once again, if your consent software has customizable, when they click consent, you could actually track that the consent page was loaded and so forth.
Mhm.
So it once again becomes an issue.
Wow.
But I would look at if you're going to unique landing pages for different ads, or even if it's the same landing page, I would
Even if
treat
it's the
it
same
as
one.
landing pages, and your landing page analytics data, you could work it backwards. You know that they have to accept consent. So if
Yeah.
Pinterest is showing me, ad 1 sent 200, ad 2 sent 100, and I go to that landing page and I say which ads, and I see ad 1 that had 200 clicks, but I only got 50 people coming through, but ad number 2, which only had 100 clicks, sent me 80 through. Ooh, I'd rather run more of ad 2.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So, but that
again,
means you have to have that. You have to have had that in place.
No.
Otherwise,
Wait, am I misunderstanding you, Alan? You're saying like we can see there were 100 clicks in the ad, but on the website we're not registering. It's a percentage of that traffic that's registering that tells us the
correct.
acceptance rate. So you
And
don't
that
have to set anything else up. Yeah.
So now what you want to do, and this is where data visualization and merging of data from different data sources, you would say, I now can do a calculation. I can have a thing showing me ad clicks, ad traffic received, and what is that percentage? Then I can also then take that from that ad traffic received, what percentage converted? Going back to my analogy where, ad 2 sent 200, had 200 clicks and only 50 accepted consent. But what's that conversion rate? If it's 100% conversion rate versus the one that had an 80% acceptance, but it had a 1% conversion rate, okay, now maybe I have to rethink which ad I want to run.
Yeah.
And that comes down to data visualization. And I've been trying to keep this very analytics agnostic, whether you're using Adobe, Google, or any of the ones that appeared since GA4 came out, because everyone hates it. And they don't realize that all analytics tools like Adobe and Google are data collection engines. Their user interfaces are not designed for you to have great quality reports. They're meant to give you, think of like driving your car. You need to see what speed you're going at, if you need gas, and if the engine's overheating, right? That's the type of report you're getting now. So you need to get a third-party data visualization tool that allow you to bring data together to do these. And this is, yes, beyond most small businesses, but if you're becoming a mid-sized large business, that's a skill set you need to either outsource or have in-house.
Yeah, I wish there was a way to quantify like the value of that for people, because like they don't know how much money they're missing out on or how many bad decisions they're making based on no data or bad data or whatever, right? I wish we could quantify that. Like, hey, you're missing out on 20 to 30% of your potential revenue or whatever that is.
Yeah.
And once again, you don't know until you go through the exercise, and then they're doing their cost benefit analysis. What's it going to cost me to set this up?
Yeah.
Oh, I have to pull data out of Pinterest. I need this API for this data visualization tool. Oh, that's not free.
Yeah.
Okay, how much is that going to cost me? How are there other ways around? And once again, I've worked with clients where we manually extract data until they can see the value. Then they say, okay, yeah, it's worth spending $10 or $20 a month on this API. or is it
Right.
$100 a month? Or are we going to build our own API? You'd be so shocked at some companies where they'll build their own API and then they get upset when the
Yeah.
website that they're building the API for changes something and their API breaks. Right? So
Right.
it's
Mhm.
Are there
things of that
particular
nature.
tools that you think are good and third-party visualization tools that you particularly like?
With my clients, the vast majority we're using Google's Looker Studio. Why? Because it's free. The basic one is free and
Okay.
is more than meets their needs. I have clients who, for privacy law purposes, for data integrity or data protection, they'd rather not use Looker Studio, keep some, and they're using things like Tableau or Microsoft BI. And then there's a whole slew of data visualization tools. So I don't tell them which one is the best one. It's the best one for them because there isn't a specific one. If you're a
Which thing you need.
Microsoft Team, if your client's using Microsoft Teams and has that whole suite of problems, they're probably going to, that already includes Microsoft BI. Fine, let's use Microsoft BI. If you're not in that environment and you want to spend the money, and I've worked with Tableau and it is wonderfully complex and can give you all sorts of really funky things if you have the time to spend in there and mastering SQL scripts and so forth. Wonderful tool.
Yay.
But
Yeah.
if you're a mid-sized to small business who doesn't have that budget, Looker Studio is fine.
Yeah.
But it depends what your database is. If you're just pulling data from Google Analytics, Google Sheets, hey, it's a great tool and does the trick. And it allows you, but if you're using Adobe, not the best tool.
They all have limits. Like Looker frustrates me for a lot of things that I want to show or bring the data together and from multiple sources in one
Yeah.
chart and all those kinds of things that, like, I haven't done a full exploration of what's out there. But when you
Yeah.
want to create a dashboard that makes sense to executives and is also accurate, I haven't seen it.
There isn't one. I'm saying that's why you need to deal with the world of the API connectors or export your
Oh, yeah.
data into an Excel
Or a data
file
warehousing.
or data warehousing. Yes. Is it simple to use Google's BigQuery stuff? No, but no data warehouses.
Right.
Right. But it's a question of what you want. I've worked with some very big clients and they have their own data warehouse and whichever database they're in, and they have a data team. And then they create the connections for whatever data visualization tool they like. But if they want
This
something
just
cheap
seems
and
like
quick,
it just seems like it's one of those things where it's a little like, to me, it's a little like taking my car to a mechanic, not being a car mechanic, that it's very hard to evaluate, like, is this a quality thing or is this just a communication issue? Are your web developers talking to your data people? Do either of them even know what they're talking about? What about us advertisers that are trying to feed data in and give you information to make change? And then
It's so much more
oh,
complicated.
somebody changed something, and it's like, oh my gosh. And it seems like a place where there could be a real benefit to so many companies for their growth, to optimize their sales, to tap markets they don't even realize that they should be tapped, that we need a data communicator position. Like, I am chief data communicator. Like,
I have spoken to the
my
data.
job is to make all of you
I
people
have actually
talk to
seen
each
one.
other.
I actually have seen in one bank that I did some contract work for where they actually had a data team and basically a VP of data. And they were tasked, and I'll say, this bank, I did work with them, what, it was about 10 years ago. At that time, they had a senior executive, a vice president, who basically got everyone on board, who got frustrated with all the things we've just been discussing, who said, nothing goes ahead, no website changes, no marketing plan moves ahead unless the analytics team signs off on it. It was a big bank.
Wow.
And had a quality assurance team. I was brought in to train the
really
quality assurance team
smart.
on how to test that any new features match the analytics tracking system.
Right.
So and we had to set up a whole system for them to report bugs in analytics. Now, was it the analytics team had to fix something, or was it a programmer had
Right.
to fix something?
Programmer has to, yeah.
And the programmers got really mad at me at one point until I sat down with them and explained to them why this is in place and why it was important to rename a variable. But it works. It doesn't matter that it works from your perspective. It doesn't work from the corporate perspective.
Yeah.
Right.
And so there was also setting up rules of governance and launching a campaign, making sure the UTM tags were correct. This team knew their analytics and their marketing campaigns. That was never really an issue. But what are we expecting to report on from your latest campaign?
What do we want to know? What do we want to know? What hypothesis are we trying to prove or disprove? And what is the ultimate outcome? Do we want to cure something? Do we just want to find out how messed up it is? I mean, because it seems like that's what a lot of companies do. It's like, wow, this is all messed up. We have no idea. And it's like, great.
And just tracking things. Once again, with in this bank cases, like even their marketing team was split into different like paid search but as you mentioned, a campaign. What did they need the reports to look like? We have to make sure that the analytics, and this was in an Adobe world, if they said, well, this is some new campaign, we've never marketed this before, what are you trying to extract? If you're trying to extract, this campaign is targeted at those 18 to 24-year-olds to opening up they're getting their first jobs. But if it was signing up for the bank services online, that's data that could be extracted from those forms, but it hasn't been.
Yeah.
So did your campaign reach its target audience? How are we going to know that? So you couldn't launch a new campaign unless we set up that data to be captured into the analytics system. This was a big bank worth billions of dollars. And even that, they still had tight budgets. But it's
it's got to be led from the top. And that's the thing is I feel like the people at the top don't understand the level of complexity we're dealing with and how many cooks there are in the kitchen that can mess things up. So that's, on the one hand, a very sensible solution to me. But to a lot of people, they're going to go like, really? Like, do we really have, because they don't get all the stuff we just talked about, right? So
they're like, oh, we know who our target audience is. We know we're reaching them. We already know that.
Well, Linda, going on your analogy, and I love using the mechanic or the garage always, is you're taking your car in. Great. If you're taking it in for something like a standard oil change, because you reach that mileage or those number of months, and you pop it up, you go to the quickie oil change place down the street, it's a fixed price, you know what it is. But now you're taking your car into a garage and saying, I have this weird noise. It's a ticking noise. And the guy looks at it, it looks like it could be the fan belt. Okay. Now he opens it up and he takes a look at the fan belt. Yeah. Oh, the fan's not properly balanced. Hold on. Oh, now it's your transmission. He's not a transmission guy. He has to bring his transmission person in. And this is why you need a team. And that's the same thing with analytics. Yes, it's a top-down approach. Someone wants to say something doesn't look right in our data or something. Great. Level one, this fixed. But how far down do we have to drill down? And your data will show you that you have a tick. Something is making a weird noise. But what is the problem? And how can we isolate it? You got a warning light come on, but then when you take it to the garage, the guy goes, oh, you didn't put the gas cap on properly, so the pressure was off. No charge. So sometimes it is really weird stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that I like that idea of like, there is a VP of analytics or just someone to coordinate it. But that would seem like a very specialized skill. I mean, it would have to be somebody who would be able to speak the language of the C-suite, speak the language of the programmers, talk to the advertisers, and manage people.
Well,
that would be the
VPs rarely
team.
know all that. VPs know how to talk to executives, and they know how to listen. So it's their managers. They have to be able to extract what they need. Yes, the marketing team, head of marketing, marketers generally hate analytics geeks. They just want the data. Programmers hate us both because I've worked with it. I've been in the middle, and I always said my job was a translator to translate between programmers to analytics to marketing and to executives. So that's been my biggest job, and sometimes I do a good job at it. Sometimes I do. Marketers get the call from the business owner, the executive. Oh, sales are down. We got to run a campaign. Get it out this week.
Yeah.
And you can whip together a great campaign and get it out.
Mhm.
But now the programmers are, well, we're in this build mode. We can't make those changes till
Yeah.
we're in a sprint. We can schedule you for 2 sprints down the line, which will be in 3
Mhm.
months. Like, no, you
Right.
need it out today. And then you have your analytics team saying, whoa, don't forget about us. We need to be able to collect this data. What are you doing? So
Yeah.
this is where ensuring proper planning, it's never too late, but planning.
Never too late to
and
set
being-
up a plan for the future.
Right, but it's also being aware that things happen. And we're all still recovering from all the shutdowns during the COVID era. Even though we're not wearing masks out there, the businesses that succeeded were the ones who were able to change things literally on a dime and say, oh, we're having to close
Fast.
storefronts. Oh, time to get e-commerce up and running.
Yeah.
How are we going to communicate to our clients? And these are things that happen, and everybody has to be flexible enough to say, yes, gee, our major competitor went out of business. How can we take advantage of it and quickly? Or worse for the business is our major competitor got bought out by even a bigger company, and they're getting a huge influx of cash to take us down.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, whenever you get a request from marketing, they're reacting to the immediacy of what's happening out there.
Yeah.
Think of it as that your job's on the line. Now, if they have the approval from the senior executive, you need to push back up to that senior executive saying, okay, we support them, but it's all the communication. Don't leave out certain things, because marketings are on the front lines. They're seeing what's happening in the business world. They're having to deal with the changing trends and things. Yes, you can have a 5-year business plan, but if something changes, you need to be able to change that plan, and everybody has to buy into it.
Well, I think you're going to have to come back sometime if you would like to, because there's a lot more to talk about. That was amazing. I think that was very.
I'm glad this was a useful discussion for everyone. Analytics is, and I'm happy we stayed out of product specifics because it is a tool. And I'm going to wrap this up. Think of, you have your toolbox. Marketers have their PPC ads, they have their social media ads, they have their social media post marketing techniques. Those are great. But one of the tools in that your toolbox has to be analytics. And you need the right analytics tool that's configured, whether you want to think of it as a screwdriver or a wrench. Trying to put a bolt on and you don't have the right size wrench, you'll have no way of doing it. You need to take the time to choose the right tool, get it configured for what you're planning on using it for, and then pull it out of the toolbox regularly, make sure it's still working and is ready to go for you.
Keep it well oiled.
Keep it well oiled. If that's the tool that needs oiling. If it's a saw, you need to keep the belts checked and oiled. And or socket wrench set, like make sure nothing's gotten rusty on you, because when you need it,
I was visualizing
like
just a regular old saw, and I was like, "You're gonna put oil on that?" Okay.
No, shut up. Get out
like a
chain.
Well, if it's a wood saw, you actually sometimes do oil those to make it go through certain things easier.
That's true.
So,
yeah,
if it's
you do.
If it's a table saw, bandsaw, you got to drop things in. So just need to know you get your tools sharp, ready to use, and ready to go.
Nice.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure.
And I
Brian,
have a sponsor.
You said you have a.
Today's episode is sponsored by Paula's Choice Enriching Calming Facial Toner, which is it's great. It's one of my favorite products because evidently, as you age, your face develops holes. Like the universe is expanding, and so is your face. So facial toner brings it back together and helps convince people that you're not quite as old as you are. Paula's Choice. It's my choice. It should be yours as well.
Congratulations. Very nice.
And here, that's what I thought the gray beard was designed to hide.
Well, yeah.
I got to keep a little bit. I got to keep
right.
a little gray. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, just hide the face. We're going to grow more hair.
Completely. Yeah,
Well, I
women
can't
don't do
hide
it
it
well.
up here,
And for
so
me,
it's
yeah, for me, I'm just going to grow the bangs longer and longer.
You're just gonna
and,
have
and bro-
a little
yeah.
ninja
Till
eye
they're
hole.
like, down over my, yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh boy.
Boy, Tracy's
Oh,
like, oh
boy.
boy.
Alan. Oh, boy.
Oh boy. Oh,
Tracy, it's your
one last
turn.
question. One last question for Alan. Alan, you're Canadian. What's up with that?
What do you mean? What's up with that? That we're not being wanting America? We don't want to be Americans?
Yeah.
All right, Alan. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks for
Thanks
everybody.
so much,
See you
Be in
Alan.
later.
touch.
Good to see you
All right.
again.
Take care.
Thank